Welcome back to the Paper2d tutorials. We're going to do shooting today. Originally I was going to do just plain shooting, but I figured might as well just go ahead and get the fun out of the way and do the shooting based off of where my mouse is clicking. So if I click here, my mouse will shoot. If I click over here, the mouse will shoot there, the ball will go there, ball will go down there, so on and so forth. But the ball's going to have a little bit of an arc, so it's not going to just shoot straight down or shoot straight up. It's going to actually go up and curl back down at a certain velocity, and we're going to control that velocity through variables and blueprints. So let's go ahead and get started here. So we need to open up my character. Again, comment this real fast, sorry. And we are going to set up a few things. Okay. We need to set up 3 different functions to get different things. One is going to be getting us the current mouse location. Okay. In this function, we're going to say, okay, here's the mouse, this is where we clicked, now tell me what it is. The other function we're going to do is we are going to get a velocity length. Or not velocity length, but vector length. Now what we're going to do with that is, yeah, we could just grab the vector length node and use it, but this vector length is actually going to take the location of the player character in relation to where the screen is clicked and determine if that's too far to shoot the ball. Obviously you can't click on the other end of the stage and shoot the ball there. You can usually only click within the screen, but even then sometimes you can only click, like if this here was the screen and the player node's the vector length node, here's your character, you can click here and something will happen, but click here and nothing happens. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks that way, so you'd have the same 4 blocks this way, the same 4 blocks this way, and the same 4 blocks down. So you'd have that entire square would be clickable, but anything outside that square will not be. And that's what we're going to use this here to help us determine, is where exactly we are allowed to click and where we're not. The other thing that we are going to do is we are going to check with the character rotation. Now the reason I have this one, and I don't think I need it, but I've taken it out of the other one I've done and it didn't work, but when I put it back in it does. And this is to control the rotation of the character when we shoot, the character animation. I don't have another way of doing this. I've tried cast twos and stuff like that, and nothing's ever worked. So this is what we're going to do with that. Okay. Now the other few things that we need is that in the main thing we are going to need a current mouse location, and this has to be a vector. The reason it's a vector is because we want not just the X value, but we also want the Z value. So we're going to need to have that. The other thing we're going to need to have is we need to do a velocity change. Now what this velocity change is going to do is it's going to allow us to change the velocity that the ball is traveling at in the ball blueprint when we go to make it. Okay. And then we need one last one for spawn location, and this is going to be a transform. That's just to help us locate where we're going to put the ball when we go in there. Okay, so now we have all that. Okay, so those are our variables. We also, I almost forgot one. We need one more. It's time to put in the is shooting variable, and that's going to be a boolean, just like the other 2 tests were. Reorder variable. Yeah, right there. Okay, that's fine. All right, so now we have that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the vector length. So let's set up the vector length here. Okay. First thing we need to do is we need to drag off of this, and we need to do a compare. And again, I can't spell. We need to do a compare float. Okay. Now, what are we comparing? Well, we're comparing whatever the mouse location is, which we're going to set that in another one, and we want to get the actor's location. Okay. So we want those two. We want to subtract, so I want to take the mouse location and I want to subtract it from wherever my actor is. I want to get the vector length of that. So I want that number spit to me in a single variable. I mean, I don't want the x and the y and the z. I just want to know what those three in a represent in the float. And then I plug that into my input. So I'm going to compare that location, okay, to wherever I'm allowed to click. So let's say I'm allowed to click 1,000. Okay, so 1,000 units from the character's location. So if I click, again using this, and this is the 1,000. If I click out here, nothing happens. If I click in here, we want something to happen. Okay. And then we need to set one more boolean, and that is going to be a clicked in range boolean, and that one is going to handle stuff outside of this particular thing. So what we want to do now is we want to set this, and pull out two of these, set them both. Okay, so now if we are outside of it, we want to set it to false. But if we're within it, if we are less than 1,000, yeah, go ahead and set it true, because that's what we want to happen. We want it to do something. And then we need to have an output here, which is going to be a type of a boolean. And we want to put range checked. Okay, so we know that it is within range, and we are good to go. So we're going to do a simple little reroute here. If I can grab it, there we go. Reroute, connect the two together, and then connect that into the out node. And then we're going to drop clicked in range into the range checked. Okay, because we want to return the value that we set here. Whatever we're going to set, whether it be true, whether it be false, we want the system outside of this to know. Alright. Now the other thing you can do, if you ever plan to change this, like through screen resolution or something, you can always just make it a variable. You can promote to variable, call it max click distance, compile, because you won't be able to set it before it, and then you can just give it a default of 1,000 for right now, and we'll just go ahead and leave that in there because it just works. But so, if you ever want to alter that later, you'll have the ability to. So that takes care of the vector length. So we're done in there. So now we're going to get the current mouse location. Now, this one's a bit tricky at first, but it works. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to, we need to get a player controller. Okay. Now, off of this, we need to take and play with the break hit. Or no, get hit, not break hit, get hit. I'm a step ahead of myself here, not underfinger. We want cursor by channel. Okay. So now with that, we want to break the hit result. All right, because we're not looking for all of this information. We're simply looking for the location. Now we want to break the vector, because we're not looking for the y. We really don't care if it's 100, 200, a negative 100, 0. It's always going to be 0 for us. So now we need to take these and make a vector. And all this may not be a needed step, but this just reassures that y will always be a 0, regardless of whatever it may somehow have become. That just sets that. Okay. So now we need to take and make this. We need to return this mouse location. All right, and we need to set this to a vector. All right, so mouse's location is there. So now all of this here, all this is going to do is tell us where our mouse is. You know, if I click here, it's 1, 1. If I click here, it's negative 1, 1. If I click here, it's negative 1, negative 1. If I click here, it's 1, negative 1. You know, so it's telling me where my mouse is being clicked at. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and we can save. All right. And now the last thing we need to do is we need to set up the character rotation. Okay. Now in the character rotation, we need to compare a couple of things. So we need to get a compare float. Okay. Now what we're going to compare is we want to compare where we clicked. Okay. We need to break this vector. Okay. Now we don't care if we clicked on the Z. We only care where on the X we clicked. Okay. Because if we click here, we're clicking left. If we click up here, it don't matter what that value is. We're still ahead of the character or behind where the character is. And then we need to get the actor location again. And we need to do the same thing. We need to break it and take its Y location. So wherever along the Y-axis the character is, and wherever along the X-axis the mouse is, we need to tell, are we positive or negative on our scale? Okay, and then depending upon where we are, we need to set a few things here. So we're going to go ahead and show this again real quick, because we need our sprite. I'm going to pull this out here and get this. Now you could just pull off of this and do a set relative. Whoops, if I can spell. And you see the relative rotation sprite here. This sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I personally prefer to just grab the sprite and set the relative, because then I get everything that I can use with that particular sprite class, instead of doing this. Set rotation. Grabbing the sprite one, and if you notice when I click on this, I can't link it to that. So we just take this, we do our whole little 180 again, copy that, drop that down there, and I plug that in, because we want to make sure that it doesn't rotate anything else, just that sprite. So by putting that in there, that reassures that. Now, the other thing that we need to do is we forgot one variable to set that I just now remembered. We need to set where the ball is going to start from when we fire, because the ball isn't going to fire from the center of the character. If we're trying to shoot it out like a fireball of our hands, we don't want our hands to be ahead of us and it to look like the fireball's coming out of our belly. So we need to set that. You don't have to set it to editable, but I do. I've had too many errors where it doesn't work because you don't do it. So we're just going to set these two. And this is always going to be 50. Now these values are only for my model. You have to play with this to know where yours are at. So, but you know, you figure it out and you'll know exactly where it is. If you were to throw the ball, you could set the value higher so that it's above the player and his animation is literally grabbing the ball over his head and throwing it. If you were kicking it, you would throw it lower, wherever the foot would be connecting to the ball at. You would then plug those values into these two locations. Just remember, when you set the second rotation, where you turn the 180 yaw, make sure you put that X value negative. Otherwise, your character is going to turn, but the ball offset will still be the same from before, and you'll be looking one way, and where your hands would have stopped facing the other direction is where the ball is going to fire from, and we don't want that. So now that ends the need for the character rotation. So now we can get right down and dirty. We did the mouse location. So now we have this. So we're going to go down here. Now we already have the input set up for the shooting. You know, there it is right there. So we have it set right now to the left mouse click. So we need to get some information here. All right. First thing we need to do, hold on. We need to get the current mouse location. Okay? Because if we don't have it, we can't do our tests. We need to then set that value to our current mouse location variable. And then we are going to take this and we are going to do in. Now the do in, what it will do is to prevent like just spamming your mouse button or just holding it and it auto firing, it's going to allow us to push and then we have to release it in order to reset it. So we can't hold it, we have to push the button repeatedly. Now yes, this will allow you to rapidly fire, but if we put a 1 in here, then like we can fire once and then it will not fire again until we have reset it. Then we can fire again and again and again. Okay. Now this, after this point, is where we get our vector length. We need this right here. Okay. We need to know the distance from point A to point B. Okay. Are we within the region of being able to click? Can we do something? You know, are we allowed to do something? So that is also becomes our condition. You know, range checked. We clicked within our 1,000. Can we do something? Yes, you can. Okay, thank you. If not, then we're going to go do false, which will not be linked to anything. Okay. So now that we have that, we're going to get the character information over here. So we're going to drag this out. Okay. We're going to set that to true. All this node literally does, all this function literally does, is tell us if we're facing left or right, which is the exact same thing this here tells us, but this is going to dictate it off of the mouse's location. So if we're standing still, we're obviously not pushing buttons. You know, we're not pushing the A or the D key, so we need to rotate the character still. So that'll help us do that. Okay, now we have this is shooting that we made earlier. We need to set this to true because we are shooting our weapon. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can take this and drop it in there. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is we need to determine which direction we're facing, because depending upon the direction we're facing depends on the equation that we have to do to get the ball to fire for us. So we need to launch a branch. Okay, and it's going to connect to the end of the set here. Now what we need to do is we need to get our sprite. Okay. We need to get it. Okay. We need to get the sprite's relative location. All right, so we need to get relative rotation. All right. Now I'm not quite sure what the two balls are up there for, but you know this is the one that works. Now we want to break this rotation, but not break it into axes. Just axes. We just want to break the rotation. So with the rotation break, we want to look at the yaw. We want to look at if we're facing one way or if we're facing the other. So if it is less than, no, we want greater than. My apologies. We want greater. If it is greater than or equal to 0. So if we are facing one way, we want to do something. If we're facing another way, then okay, good, we're false, and we want to do something else. Okay, so now we need to determine, well, what we're going to do if it's the wrong way. So we need to come down here. We need to grab our spawn locations, and this is where we're going to set spawn location. All right, we'll go ahead and plug them in here. Plug that in there. Okay, now we need to figure out. We need to spawn the character. We need to spawn the ball wherever we're facing. So we're going to do we're going to drag off of this. We're going to make a transform. So this is going to give us the ability to get some scale and get the rotation and get the location. So we want to go ahead and copy this, copy, paste that, okay, and we're going to drop that into the rotation. Now, the other thing we want to do, in order to get the location, we want to find out where our actor is. Okay, actor, location. But that's not all we want to do. We also want to grab our ball offset. Okay. Now, we're going to add these two together. So we're going to add vector on vector, and then that's going to be our location. So whatever our character is, whatever the center of our character is, that plus whatever this is, so for this particular, if it's true, it's going to be 140x and 50z. So it's going to go up 140, or it's going to go up 50 and over 140. Okay, it's going to go over to the right 140. And then that'll set that's locations. Now, what we need to do, if we need to do the exact same thing, so copy, you do the same thing down here, okay, plug that in. And now this is going to tell us where we're going to spawn if this is the backside. So we got that information from this here, and that'll change the ball offset. So if we're facing to the left, the ball needs to be at negative 140, so we're going to go back 140 and go up 50 so that we're now at the new hands position. So now that both of those are set, we need to take and we need to tell it what to do. I mean, we need to give it its math. And this is where the fun comes in. Now, this is where we got to change the velocity that our blueprint is going to handle. Okay, so we need to make a branch. So, all right. Now, because I'm low on room, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to collapse the nodes, and I'm going to call this test z access to right. Now, this collapsed graph, what it allows is for you to open it, and now you have everything within it. Okay. Input, new output, and I want it to be executable. Alright, so now we have that. So now inside of here we can do all of the math we want. So we're going to drag this up here. Okay. So now we need to be able to set this. We need to set it twice. Okay. So we're going to drag it out here twice. Okay. We're going to set it once if it's true. We're going to set it if it's false, because we want to know certain locations. If this is my character and I click up here, then my velocity change is going to be different than if I click down here. And we need to do the math that is going to allow us to check that. Alright? And that's what we're going to do here. Okay? So we need to do this, and we need to do an OR boolean. Okay? Now what's this going to allow us to do is that if we have a value, it's going to be this or this. So we'll fire off of either of these two events should any of these two values become true. Okay, we'll get back to that in just a second. So we need to get actor location. So we have the actor location. We need to know the ball offset. You know, where are we firing this ball from? All right, we need to again add these together. And then now we're going to take this and we're going to subtract it. But we need to know what we're going to subtract it from. And that's where our mouse comes in. Because we want it to go to where we were, where we clicked. If this is my character right here, and I click here, I want the ball to go up there and then kind of arc back down shortly after that point. You know? And then once I click down below here, I want the ball to drop down. And that's what we're going to determine. So now we need to break this. Alright? I need to know two different things. Or I need to do two different things. One is I need to multiply the x by float. Okay? I also need to do this to the z. Alright, so we set that there and we do that. Now what this does is this just increases the velocity. Because if you do this minus this, all you really get is like a small number by a small number, and that's not really going to alter the velocity any. And that's not what we want. But we want to know on the z-axis if we're above 1,000 or below 1,000. So we're going to go up here, and we're going to look. Okay, we want greater than or equal to, but we also want a less than or equal to float. Okay, so we're going to look at these two. Okay. This one being 1,000 and this one being a negative 1,000. Now, the 1,000 and negative 1,000 value, I get that because of what my max click distance is set to. Alright, so I mean, if I wanted to, I could drag this right here. I could get that, and I could do this right here. And that would still work. And then just drag that up there and drag that up there. But the only problem with this is it's going to spit out just off the 1,000. So it's never going to fire. So that actually won't work, so I apologize for that misleading comment. Because we want it to be between these two values is where we can fire. So we set those like so. Okay, we fire those. Now, once we've tested these to see if these are true, okay, we need to then tell the system where are you going to put these. So we need to do two different vectors. Okay, we need to do a vector there, and we need to do a vector here. Okay? Now, these vectors are going to differ in one aspect. All right. This one here is going to be exactly what it is. All right, and that's going to go there to there. All right. Now, the next one is going to... I actually did that wrong. I need to change something. This needs another multiplier on it. But anyway, all right. Now multiply. Okay, we're going to multiply float by float. Now you could probably just do a -2 on this to flip the scale, but just for simplicity's sake, I'd prefer to just use multipliers like so and do it like this. I mean, it adds more. Whoops, wrong button. Wrong choice. Let's do it this way. It adds more work to it in the end, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, and then we just plug those into there. Okay, because if the value of the z-axis, if it's above 1,000 or below -1,000, then we're going to fire, but we're going to fire at a certain value. Okay, if it's below that, if it's anywhere in between that, then we're just going to fire. It's false. We're just going to fire it off. No big deal. But if it's above it or below it, then we don't want it to really change any of the velocity or anything. All right, so that sets up that side. So now what we need to do is we need to go and set up the other side. All right. Now the other side is pretty much the same as this, so we can just go ahead, and I need to actually do this real quick, otherwise this will never fire. Put in a reroute. Hook that to that, and then hook that to that. Okay, so now we can save, and we can do that. Now, we can copy all of this, because the other graph's going to be pretty much identical. We can pull out. So now that sets the new param, so we can do the same thing here. Okay, and we can just start it with a branch, just to have something to set there, collapse it real quick. Collapse node. And then this is going to be test z-axis to left, so that we know we're spinning around. Okay. Alright, so now we've got that, and then we've got to add a new executable to that, and we plug that into there. Now the difference here, though, is we're not going to multiply by 1. We're just simply going to connect these, because we're facing the way we want. All of our numbers to the right are positive, and all of them to the left are negative. Don't ask me why, I really don't know. I just know that that's how it is when running print statements. Because you can run print statements in here anywhere to see the different variables and stuff like that. Okay, now with that being done, we need to take and do one last hookup where it's going to take and spawn the actor from class. Now, we don't have an actor at the moment to spawn, because we got to make that still. But we do have everything else we need for it. So now that being made, we can't spawn anything, but yep, I know we have an error. So we go ahead and minimize that. Now, we're going to go to our ball flipbook. We're going to make a blueprint. We're going to create a blueprint using this. Okay? Yep, go ahead and create it under blueprint, create ball. Okay, so now we have the ball class here, ball blueprint. Alright, you can go ahead and save it real quick. Now, to this ball blueprint, we need to add a few things. Alright, first thing we're going to add is we need to add a projectile movement. Okay, that's going to be the first thing. And then we need to add a sphere, which replace those two. Whoops. Okay. And then, because we want the sphere to be first, we want the collision to be the root of the ball, not the ball be the root of the collision. So we're going to call this ball collision, and then this is just the ball as the asset to it. And then you can see here, we can check it here. Now the other nice thing about this is you can see here, you know, it's nice and blue. If we came down here, we could change it to purple. We can change the overall color of it, you know, a darker green, a little darker green on it. And we can go almost a pure black, which would be kind of bad, but so I mean, and then you see in the thing there, that black section there, it's kind of transparent as it is, as it's just, you know, going through it and all. So we'll leave it like that. Compile and save that. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need this to be determined. We need some things for this thing to be figuring out here. Okay. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go to the graph and we're going to get us an event hit. You can use event on component hit, which is set via just clicking on add event and clicking on component hit. Pretty much all the same information will be used. So actually, let's just go ahead and use that. Okay, so we're going to use that. We're going to add some impulse to this. Now what this is going to do is this is going to control our bouncing and stuff. That's what this is controlling. Primitive component. Why is this not working? Maybe I gotta do it off this. Add impulse. Okay, add impulse clip. There it is. Okay. You want to make sure that you pull off of the other here and pull over onto the target, because you want to make sure you have the primitive component version of it. Now we need to get this impulse in this location variable. So now the location is going to be simple. That's going to just be mere actor location. Okay, and then that's going to take and be plugged into that. Now the impulse is going to be a velocity check. We're going to get our velocity. We're going to multiply that to a float of 100. And that. Now I got these values simply from looking at the third person or the first person shooter template, as I'm making a game in that as well for the school I'm going to. So now once that's done, okay, we need to look at the bouncing. We don't want it to just sit there and bounce forever. We want it to just bounce a couple of times and stop. So we need to make a bounce counter. Okay, and this bounce counter is going to be of a integer. because I want it to be a whole number. I don't want it to bounce 3.22795 times. I want it to bounce 3. Bam, done and over with. So we need to take and we need to set this. Okay. So we're going to set this. So every time we fire this, we want to get the current ball count. We want to add integer to integer. We want to add 1 count. So for every time we fire this off, every time we shoot a ball, we're going to add a ball to it. Okay, we're going to add to it. And then after that, we need to know, what do we do with this? So we're going to add a branch. Okay. Now what that branch is going to determine is if this value is greater than or equal. No, we want, greater than or equal to a 4. Okay. Now what's that going to do is it's going to allow it to bounce 4 times. So it's going to come through and it's going to bounce once. It's going to be shot again, bounce twice. It's going to hit the ground again. Now, this ain't off of shoot, this is off of hit. So every time it hits the ground or hits an object other than the player itself, because I'm going to set the collision to ignore the player. But so if I hit a platform, I hit the platform once, it adds 1. I hit it a second time, now we're at 2. I hit the platform a third time, we're at 3. When I hit the platform the 4th time, the ball disappears. Okay, but we need to tell it to do so. So on true, we're going to destroy actor. And if it's false, well, we do nothing because we don't want it to do anything. And that's all we have to do for the ball. So now we need to go back to the character class. Okay, we need to set the class to the ball. Now everything compiled. If everything was done correctly, we should be working. Oh, okay. I know something we forgot. Forgot a couple of things. The first thing we forgot was to reset this shoot. Okay. We never reset it. So we need to go in here and we need to actually reset this thing. Okay. So we need to come here to release. We want a delay. Now I'm putting this delay in so that I can see my actual shooting animation. Okay, we'll leave it a default of 2. And then I want to set is shooting. And I want to set it to false. Now I'm going to reset. So every time I shoot, once I release it, it's going to reset that 1 to a 0. And then it's going to go on. Alright, so that takes care of that. Now, we need the velocity of the ball transferred over to the actual ball thing itself. Okay? Because right now, it has no velocity. So we need to go back to the ball. We need to add a variable. This variable is going to be called character velocity is what we're going to do, because that's all we're getting from it. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that. Now, this ain't exactly the best way to do this, but this is the way I found that works for me. So you can play around by all means and find a better way that works for you. But this does get the job done. So cast to 2D underscore character. Alright, now the object that we want is going to be the player pawn. So we want to get player pawn. And then make sure that that connects up. Because sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of finicky that way. Alright, we want to get... Oh, this is going to be a 2D underscore character. Now, when you set this variable type, you want to make sure you set it to the object, not the class, the object. Alright, so you bring it over here. We're going to set this. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. Alright, now, so now that that is set, compile so that we can use it. Once you put this set piece in on a cast, you have to hit compile. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the information out of that set, or out of that new variable. So now we want to get the velocity change. So whatever we're setting we set the velocity to in the my character, once we shot the ball, we need to set this thing's velocity to that. So we need to set velocity to local, and then we need to set the new velocity. Okay. So now When we go in here, as we can see, a little bit of tweaking needs to be done, but for the most part, the ball fires up there. And this is the other thing I was afraid of. See, as we're clicking down here, the ball is firing up, but as we click up here, the ball is firing down. But they're not hitting the collision. They're not hitting anything. So the reason for that is that I forgot to set up the collision. So what we need to do is go into Component. We need to go to the ball collision here. We need to scroll down to where it says collision. Okay, now I always extend the category so I can see it, but we don't want to overlap. We actually want it to ignore certain things. We want it to ignore only pawn. So it's going to ignore the pawn, which is the character, and it's going to ignore vehicles. Everything else it should hit. So let's compile, save, and let's check this again. And as you can see, it's stopping, it's hitting, it's not bouncing. Why are we not bouncing? Let's stop this. Go into our ball, go into this. Okay, so let's unselect that and do an actual event hit. And then this, and then this, and see if that changes it. I don't know why it's like that, but I have noticed in this particular mode that it does that. So now, and it's still not working. Why is it not working? Let's see here. Let me consult the original. See, add impulse at location, other target. Integer. Why is it locking onto that thing? Let's look into some things here. Let's look at the projectile thing. Okay, set the max speed here. Let's physics maybe? Let's see. Why are we stuck on that? Right. Well, I'm going to pause this and figure this out real quick, so I will be right back. Alright, well I figured out what it was. It was something fairly simple that I should have noticed. Under the projectile movement class, there's an option under projectile bounces. Make sure you select should bounce and bounce angle affects velocity. That will help determine that. The other thing now, we're done with the ball class, so we can go ahead and close that out. The other thing we need to determine is why we are not playing the particular flip book. Because remember how we made the state machine before and we said that we'd come back to it when we went to do the shooting thing? Well, now we need to come back to it. So we need to select all of these and those, and we need to drag all this down. Okay. We need to make a new branch right here, which is going to handle the setting of the animation for our shooting. and its condition is going to be is shooting, nope, wrong one, shooting. Okay, that's going to be its condition. We're going to slide these two back a little bit. We're going to drop shooting in here as a setter. Is shooting is going to be linked to shooting, and then we're going to connect those two. So now we took and we brought information in to our animation state machine for is shooting, which is being set here and here. Okay. We set it to the variable within the animation state, which is separate from everything else. We're doing a test to see, if we're falling, we're doing the jump animation. If we're shooting, we're doing the shoot animation. And if we're moving, we're doing either the walking or the idle, depending upon yay or nay on the move. And we have that set. So now let's see if that fixed the issue. All right. And there it is. As you can see, we are now shooting the ball. But when I click up here, we're shooting down. We don't want to be shooting down. We want to be shooting the ball up. So we need to take the z-axis when we shoot to the left, and we need to multiply that by a -1. So we're going to go back in here, and this is the left. So we need to take the z, and we need to multiply the float by float by a -1. And we need to plug this value into the old z's. Okay, so now this should fix that problem on the left side. Yep, and see, now we click up, the ball goes up, we click down, the ball goes down. Same thing on the other side. But see, this is wrong because, well, no, that's right. It would have all downward momentum, it would have no upward momentum. But if we clicked over here, we can see, if we click here, we can see it trying to kick it up, and we click over here, we can jump up there. Well, we can't make that jump, but we can jump here, and then jump up here, and then jump up here. Now, something I do want to show you. If I click here, it goes. But if I click outside of that sprite, out of that background, it can't do anything. So that's another thing. That's part of just the program itself. So, but I can shoot, I can jump and shoot, but notice the animation doesn't play. Okay, but if I wanted the animation to play when you shoot, all you would have to do is come here into the animation state. Close this, because this is a pain in the rear when you get going. If your stuff ever fluctuates in and out, look for that little box that just appeared on my screen, because that sometimes will cause it, and you'll notice it mainly when you go to drag and the thing just take off in a whole wild direction. So we're going to break this link, and we're going to break this link for the moment. We're going to pull you out here. We're going to break this link. I'm going to drag that down and that up. Okay, so now what we're doing here is we're prioritizing the shoot instead of the fall. Okay, so if I'm shooting, I want to do the shooting animation. I don't care if I'm in the air. I don't care if I'm standing on the ground. I don't care if I'm walking. So there's my shoot animation for there. And see, when I jump, I get my shoot animation. Now you can have an alternate animation for if you're jumping, you can make in here something like, you make a branch before this, you do branch, okay, it would be connected to false, not true though, and you could make, you could do an and boolean, okay. Now this allows for two variables to be true. So if shooting is true, and falling is true, then I want you to say print string, see, I'm in the air, ha ha ha, and then we would connect that down to here, which we can drag that there, so what this will do is, if we're on the ground, it's not going to do nothing. If we jump, it won't do anything. But If we jump and we're in the air, we're playing ha ha ha. And you could have a separate air animation for that particular event. But in this particular case, we don't have that, so we just connect these two. Well, that covers all of that. That covers our ability to shoot. It does change velocity, as we see, because it shoots up. If we're shooting up, the velocity's got to be higher to get higher. But if we're shooting down, the velocity, the pitch or the pitch is different. But if we shoot kind of here, you can see it's starting to roll. As we get closer, it's a little different. You click higher, it changes a little bit more. And if we click down, it changes down. Now, these settings are completely editable. You can play with them however you want to, obviously, because it's all going to be based off of the game that you are currently wanting to try and create. So you just have to play with them and see what you want to do versus that. We're going to do one more tutorial after this one, and that's going to be doing the destructible platforms. I'm going to make a couple of these platforms into actual destructible objects, and when the ball hits them, not the character, but just the ball, hits the platforms are going to disappear. This particular method will also work in games such as like brick blasts and stuff like that, where you got to knock the ball up and hit all the bricks out, and once all the bricks are gone, you're good to go. So let's go ahead and save the game, save the file where we're at, and when we return, those are the things we're going to work on. Thank you.